We were, I'm a little late starting this morning, but I had something that came up that could not be put aside. So, anyways, I'm back. It's now 11:30. Should have been here for 10 a.m., but hey, we're here, and I'm going to be discussing human rights again, and all of the difficulties we're even going to have making sure that our rights are not just recognized, but also that everybody gets along within our human rights. And I'm just going to put something up for now and wait for everybody to join, and we'll be right back.
Attention, Canadians. Feel disconnected from our current political system? Join the Powershift to Freedom movement by the Canadian People's Union and be part of a bold vision for Canada's future. It's time to shift the political power to its rightful owners, the Canadian citizens and Indigenous peoples of Canada. Dive into our history, understand the need for change, and embark on the quest for true democracy. Are you concerned about our nation's commitment to human rights and self-governance? The Powershift to Freedom aligns with vital treaties and international laws, enabling us to claim our rightful place as collective head of state. We advocate replacing our partocracy system with a true democracy to ensure your voice counts more than party interests. When our national collective civil and political rights are respected, your influence on policies will be direct and impactful. Join us on this noble struggle to make every Canadian and Indigenous peoples a meaningful participant in our future. People 15 years old and over can sign the Convention of Consent and unite for our rights in the Constitution. Ready to be part of this transformative movement? Visit thecpu.ca for more details. Embrace the change and shape our future.
Okay, and I'm back. I don't know where that QR code came in from. But anyways, I'm just going to delete this here. And there we go. Our program totally changed. And when I opened up our streaming service, it was like, okay, all of these new little squares came in, and it was like, oh my God, what's going on? How do I use this? But anyways, I had to kind of work myself around it. But anyways, I wanted to speak to you today in regards to human rights. It's not so, how can I say, good morning, everybody. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's not crystal clear because there's different levels of human rights, and there's different, you've got minority rights and all of these things. And where do things come into? And how has Canada and our human rights commissions used human rights? And how have they manipulated it? So first of all, when we're looking at our universal human rights, which is, our country, the people are supposed to rule in each country. We are supposed to be in charge of all of our natural resources. So, colonialism is supposed to have been removed, but in Canada, we still live it today. And one of the things that came up in regards to one of the debates at Parliament was in regards to all the commotion. I mean, we're in May, but anyways, they were still talking about the commotion that happened at Christmas and in regards to colonial holidays. Well, Victoria Day is another colonial holiday in a sense, because we're hailing a queen that actually never, really ruled, other than people assuming that she did rule, but all she did was make suggestions, and if the Parliament accepted her suggestions, well, then they proceeded with them. But other than that, the kings and queens have had no rights since the as far back as the 1700s. So, the 1600s, I should say. So 1607. And then 1649, they made an actual law in England so that the crown, the imperial crown could not rule. It was what they saw as the imperial crown was the Parliament itself. So anyways, long story short, we're still under colonialism today here in Canada, because as long as we have Charles sitting there as the sovereign for Canada, representative, and the Governor General, being the de facto, uh, being the one in charge for a de facto King Charles. All of this nonsense should have been removed in 1982, and it's still there. So when we're looking at our human rights, it's the human rights of everybody together in Canada as one. Okay, one entity. It has nothing to do with race or gender or anything like that. It has to do with human beings, the people, the people. Doesn't matter, what color we are, what languages we speak, who we are. It's everybody as one in Canada. However, in Canada, there's two peoples, okay, in regards to international human rights. And it was the ones who were here to begin with, which were the Indigenous nations. And then the what we call the newcomers, the people who were colonized in the other countries, forced into basic slavery for the crown, and then brought over here to do the work that they wanted them to do and to fight the battles. And most of them were prisoners of war that they were bringing over. And, sad reality is, a lot of these people were brought here and promised they were indentured and, they worked for free for 3 years before they were allowed to do their own thing here in Canada. So, good morning, everyone. And yes, again, um, here's reality, reality check. What happens in Canada now? How do we fight for our rights? Well, first, we need to fight for our national rights. Okay. And that's all of the peoples together with the Indigenous nations. We both have to take part in this. It affects our country. So we were supposed to be decolonized in 1982. We were not. And this is what the CPU is about. It's about fixing what hasn't been fixed, because the government made sure to only give the illusion of it. And that's been what we've been seeing in governments for the last 100 years, is illusion of governance. Or actually, we can go as far back as 1607, because the people still think that the kings and queens have power. But in reality, okay, this is what they say. Well, the kings and queens don't have power. It's the parliament. Well, okay, so it's the parliament. The power transferred over. What happened with that? Well, if you look at Canada right now, the sovereign, legally, the sovereign is who? It's Charles. And a corporation can't just own itself, and a piece of paper can't just own itself. It has to have a human being, a person, a real human being, not just a person, but it has to have a human being. So technically, yeah, Charles is the head of state for Canada. So we are still a colony, still colonized. And even Pierre Trudeau's lawyer back in 1982 in his book, he said, yeah, Canadians were still a colony in 1982. So welcome to reality, people. So one of the things that we were seeing, one of the stories in Blacklocks this week, was in regards to human rights, and the thing about, you know, our holidays. And yes, they're very colonialized. It's it's Christianity. But the thing is Christianity really colonial? And those are the questions, right? So when you're looking at the discussion on this, there was a comment that, or a report made, and in regards to this. So I'm going to do a screen share with you, and discuss this, because it's about the fact that, okay, well, they're saying that Christian holidays are discriminatory. It discriminates. No, and you got to be careful with how you choose your words, right? So these people are trying to say that, oh, it's discrimination. Well, against who? If you have a holiday, who are you discriminating against? You're not, the holiday itself isn't discriminatory, but the fact that if you don't allow others who are not Christian to have their holidays, Well, this is what they're saying is discriminatory. Okay, it discriminates against it's Muslims, and everybody should have their own holidays, or name all of these religious give everybody national holidays right across the board for every religion there is. Well, now we're looking at faith. Okay, so Christmas, yeah, it was faith based, it was religious, it's still colonialism in a sense, but there's a very fine line in this, and it's how do you give everybody their rights without insulting somebody, or so in Canada, being a colonialist country, yeah, it was patriarchal. It was, women were not even existent in voting in the beginnings. So the indigenous nations as well. So there was a lot of discrimination in colonialism, and it still has today in a sense. So when we're trying to fight discrimination, then you have to look at, okay, well, who has rights here? And which rights do you advance? So we have to make sure that moving forward, that we advance everybody's rights. Okay, those are the rights that are in our charter. That actually it goes for everybody. Everybody's human. Everybody's the same. There's no ifs and buts about that. Everybody has to focus on the same things, and this is where those rights exist. So we're not going into the minority aspect or anything like that right away, other than on a national level, the minorities are the indigenous nations. Canadians are Canadians. So if you're looking at the United Nations and you say, well, I live in Quebec and I'm in the English minority. The United Nations will tell you, oh, well, no, you can't claim being, in Canada, English is, you can't claim being in the minority. And you can't claim being in a minority in Quebec, because at the international level, Quebec should not have a different charter than the one that Canada signed on to, and our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, plus our international human rights, which is our International Bill of Rights, which includes our political and civil rights as well as human rights and all of these things. So when you have Quebecers say, well, no, I'm English and I'm in the minority in Quebec, well, does it really matter? Or no, you can't make that claim at the United Nations. You're going to lose, because that claim has already been made at the UN. And their answer was, sorry, you're not a minority. English speaking people are not a minority in Canada. So every time you go to the UN, provincial aspects, municipal aspects do not count. Okay, it's national. So your problem had better be national, not a provincial problem. Okay, I hope everybody understands that. So really in Canada, we should not have different provincial human rights offices that only look at the provincial legislation, the provincial charter of rights. It should be the provincial constitution. It should only be the national and the international. But here in Canada, they only look at our national charter and the provincial charters and totally disregard international law, which is embedded into our charter. But most of the lawyers and those teaching law have ignored the fact that, yes, Canada has signed on to these things. And even though we're still under colonialism right now, we're still tied, because of that, we're still tied to the UK. And, a lot of them will try to say, oh, no, that's not true. It's not true. Start reading. It is true. Canada is still tied to the UK no matter what. No matter what. Because the people have not had the right to determine our kind of system that we want here in Canada. And there's nothing wrong with the present system as long as it's us that would make the final decisions. And we can change a lot of within the system. But, when you're looking at that, it's still not too bad. Parliament still works. But the thing is what we've been seeing lately is that there's a lot of levels inside of the Canadian government, not necessarily the political side, but the management side is very dangerous to look at right now because they've been so used to doing their own thing or being told, oh, yeah, you can do this, you can do that, or this is how we do things. I mean, even in some of the legal offices that I've heard from, you know, the, the workers will say, well, you know, I have to, how could I say, the paralegals will say, okay, well, I'm working in this office and the lawyer told me to go ahead and do this. And I said, well, no, I'm not supposed to be able to do that. And the lawyers will say, oh, it's okay. We do it all the time anyway. So being shisty and doing illegal stuff, you know, that you're not supposed to be doing legally, oh, it's okay in Canada. So you can be deceptive, you can be filled with, you know, corruption to the gills. You can do whatever you want and make decisions that you want. So I'm going to move forward and we're going to go see about this discussion that they had and what fueled everything and how things could be construed they can use anything to be able to say, well, now we got to go and make a law because we're afraid. And I'm not going to publish my name to this. I work for the government. I'm paid by the government. I'm supposed to be working for the people, apparently. Okay, this is the lie. They do not work for the people. They work for the government itself, and the people can only pick and choose our next dictators because we have no rights to stop anything. We have zero rights right now in Canada in our charter where we can override our government and stop them. And that's why we need to enforce our international law rights because that gives us that power. So as long as people keep ignoring international law and lawyers keep ignoring international law and all of the corporations ignore, well, in Canada, you know, our international human rights. And if they rely on what the Canadian government tells them to do, so private corporations in Canada that rely only on the Canadian government and provincial governments to tell them what to do might be infringing on their own employees and clients' human rights. So, you know, somebody's asking, so how do we do it? Well, first, you need to sign your convention of consent. In order for us to be able to get all of these things recognized, we have to be on the same wavelength. Okay, we have to be focused on the same reality, the same issues, the same. We need to want the same things, which is our civil and political rights, collective political and civil rights, totally recognized throughout the board, and to be able to at least decolonize properly along with the Indigenous nations. Okay, because the Indigenous nations have a right as well. And this is where UNDRIP already comes into play for the Indigenous nations. And with UNDRIP, they're supposed to be able to negotiate with the Canadian government in regards to their lands and all the things that haven't never truly been negotiated and were taken advantage of by the Canadian government beforehand in England. So when you're looking at UNDRIP, there's you know, these people have rights and if the Canadian government recognizes the rights of the Indigenous nations, they have to recognize our rights to decolonization as well. It comes from the same place. The one difference is that UNDRIP, even though at the beginning was an unbinding agreement, it's based on an unbinding agreement because of what's transpired worldwide. The one thing about all of our human rights, which includes the Indigenous nations in there and their rights in that sense, is our International Bill of Rights. All of those rights include everybody on the planet. Doesn't matter if they're Indigenous or not. What the difference is which country and where did where were countries invaded by the imperial crowns. You have Germany that invaded countries, Spain, France, I mean, they all did it. Okay. So at one point in time, most of the races, well, not races, but I mean, the people were colonizers. And then even in the indigenous nations in those countries, if you look at their own histories, they were taking over the other tribes and whatnot, doing the same thing, just in different ways. So at the history and human nature is what we really need to look at when we're looking at human rights and everything else, and what divides us, or what separates us into different categories, and why should we be careful or not as to what we're thinking about, because there are distinctions that we need to make. It's not in black and white. There's a lot of gray areas, but we also always have to remain as we are human beings, and we look at each other like that, and then with given rights. So before we go on to this letter, I just want to make sure that to give another example is the transgender issue. Well, if you're going to give somebody the right to, sue anybody in Canada for, $30,000 because the person refused to call you they, or whatever is what you want to be called, because in your head you feel you're that way, but not physically. Physically, you are either male or female, period. No distinctions. But in your head, okay, you want to be called this. Well, if I say, hey, in my mind, I'm African American, okay, and I want you to recognize me as that. Well, we're not all mind readers, okay, first of all. And unless it's physical, it should have nothing to do with gender to begin with. I mean, gender has everything to do with physical, not what's in your head. Okay, feelings. It has nothing to do with feelings. So we have to make sure that we know exactly. Well, if these people have a certain right, all of them have the right to have those rights. So if I have the right to be upset, if somebody doesn't call me Ms. or Miss, and they think I'm ma'am, I can sue them for $30,000 as well. If the trans can do it, we can too. Oh no, but the trans are a minority group. You're not a minority. It's about names, identity. Okay. So again, it's a whole play on words, manipulation on how to get one group of a minority group, um, and and their rights, their apparent supposed rights, pushed onto a huge population base. So you get, a handful of people to be able to override millions. Okay. So it makes no sense at all. So we have to stick with common sense every time we look at human rights. And we should always begin with the fact that we are human beings, not this, not that, not male, not female, human beings. Okay. So, anyways, now we've got the government who is afraid. Politicians are afraid. They're not coming back. They've made really bad decisions. They've made laws that really go against our rights. Our laws are horrific here in Canada. Most of them would have to be rewritten because they do not follow the rule of law. They are the rule by law, and that is technically illegal. It's unconstitutional. And what is unconstitutional to begin with? So that's another story there. So I'm going to share screen with you this here, and it's something as simple as Christmas, like, for God's sakes. There we go. I hope you can see this. I'm just going to double check here. Yeah, you can see that. Now we're looking at, okay, stung by Christmas backlash, Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. Okay, so the Canadian Human Rights Commission was so upset by a backlash over Christmas, it says it feared for staff safety. The commission in 2023 provoked an uproar in Parliament after publishing a report denouncing Christmas as a racist observance grounded in Canada's history of colonialism. Well, first of all, they're right about the colonial aspect, but is it really racist? No, it's colonialism. Okay. What does racist have to do with faith? Nothing. Okay. So now access to information records indicate a single staffer in the Commission's Policy, Research, and International Division created the report discussion paper on religious intolerance. Now, this is supposed to be a discussion paper, but now this person, they removed the name of it. The name of the author was the only part censored in 314 pages of access records. Okay, so now the person didn't want to put their name. But if you're going to be paid by this government to do something, and because really you're working for the people, um, your name needs to be there. So now what? They're all now we're going to be seeing a whole bunch of things happening without names being attached to it, and not being able to actually see who is actually the ones creating laws or whatever. It's just phenomenal to me that we're in this day and age. Now, the commission, in concealing the author's name, invokes 17 of the act that states the head of a government institution may refuse to disclose any record requested under this part that contains information the disclosure of which could reasonably be expected to threaten the safety of individuals. This here is not even constitutional to begin with. Okay, it's unconstitutional for the simple reason that, okay, the government institution may refuse to disclose any record. It has to fall under the freedom of information. They can't do that. Now, if because of it threatens the safety of the individuals, well, in what manner? So they have to address this issue, because even though anybody would have, I mean, the senators could be all feeling threatened, the politicians could all be feeling threatened. If these people are willing to write things that might, anything we say today is um up for discussion, because anybody could have a problem with it, and then anybody can, right wings, left wings, whatever they are, nut wings, could have a say about that, and threaten the safety of anybody. Well, who threatens the safety of people the most other than our government? Our government does a lot more threatening than anybody else, especially when we've got bogus laws. So here it says, record shows the mystery author spent 2 years revising the discussion paper. The Policy, Research, and International Division began working in mid-2021 on a discussion paper on religious intolerance. It said the Research Division is a small team of human rights experts, according to the Commission's last annual report. So, so they're hiding the name of one person. However, when you keep reading here, so the paper is intended to be public resource acknowledging the issue in Canada and giving a very high level. So then it goes on to say decolonize. The report was vetted by a network of stakeholders for advancing racial equality and a decolonization and anti-racism consultation committee prior to publication. Now here, racial equality. So you've got the Indigenous peoples that, yes, maybe they're of a different race in a way, but their decolonization, how can I say, has really nothing to do with faith-based. Okay, that's political. Their decolonization has to do with political. And then it says anti-racism consultation committee. So when you look at decolonization, yes, it's not just for the Indigenous peoples, it's for all peoples. So you shouldn't be bringing racial equality into that, because everybody has the same equal rights to decolonization. So again, it's they're saying, oh well, maybe against indigenous peoples in Canada. Again, that could be because, again, of misinformation that was put out by our governments, who did it on purpose to get everybody against indigenous peoples for nothing. And everything that they've done that was atrocious to indigenous nations now reflect bad on us. And we're the people who didn't even know what was going on, because nobody was really interested in what government was doing. And we go about our ways, and never mind that natural resources were stolen from them, as well as from us, from what we've gotten over the years through the agreements, and what was already given. So, long story short, we need to look at the whole picture. We need to actually come into this. There's peoples here in Canada. Just because they are in a minority doesn't mean that they are not equal in numbers to us. They are equal in numbers to us, whether we like to see it that way or not. So, in Canada, we have Canadian citizens and then the Indigenous nations, and within the Canadian citizens, there should be no talk of race or different cultures or minorities or whatever. It's national. Okay, so I hope you're getting where I'm getting with. You're seeing where I'm getting with this, because it should not be based on faith. Colonialism is colonialism, and it has to do with the type of system of governments that we have, and as well, not ruled by the people. So that's what colonialism is. Not ruled by the people. When you're ruled by the people, then it's no longer, it's democracy. And as long as we're not ruled by the people, and we are not in Canada, we only get to choose our next dictator, which is neo-colonialism, and it's been changed to that. So again, not very promising there either, but at least um, you see that we have to be able to stand up, take our rights as a people, and the people needs to replace Charles. Okay, the king and the crown of Canada, which is the government. So the government has no business at one level of being the how can I say, corporation. So see, our country is based on it being a corporation soul and one owner. Okay, and the corporation soul used to be the queen, and then, or Her Majesty in right of Canada. Um, but again, that was that part of the funding. So if you're looking at the funding and you're looking at all this, there's only supposed to be one signatory. And so they put the king or queen. You can't have, a whole bunch of Canadian citizens, so you have to have a representative, in the sense that's going to represent you to be able to sign the documents. But at the same time, in Canada, we should have referendums that tells the government what they're allowed to sign and not sign in regards to what Canadians want, and the Indigenous nations as well. So this is why we're here. What we're trying to fix is to make sure that we finally get together, get our rights recognized, because until we get our rights recognized, this country is going to hell in a handbasket. We're already there. So until the people recognize that, we're not going to be able to get anywhere. So here it says the paper is intended for public resource, acknowledging the issue in Canada and giving a very high level overview, said an internal memo. The report was vetted by a network of stakeholders for advancing racial equality and a decolonization and anti-racism consultation committee prior to publication. None questioned the Christmas reference. The report identified Christmas as a discriminatory practice since it observes Jesus' birth. Now, discrimination against religious minorities in Canada is grounded in Canada's history of colonialism, said the discussion paper. The history manifests itself in present-day systemic religious discrimination, on an obvious example in statutory holidays in Canada. So here they're just trying to say, well, it's kind of discriminatory, but at the same time, because others don't have, paid holidays, or religious holidays. So again, here it's kind of nitpicking in a way that that's always been like that. And yes, Muslims and every other one of the others also deserve to have their holidays. should everybody be use a national holiday? This is something Canadians will have to get together and discuss. But again, it it'll fuel fires, okay, in regards to all of these things. So when we're looking at human rights, it can get very confusing very fast. The tables can turn. You really have to think about it. You have to know exactly what your rights are. And because of, again, you know, we can choose other things that we want, but to be inclusive of everybody and to make sure that everybody has equal rights, we need to stick to equality rights. Anything that's based on preferences are going to have to get either waived off or discussed or fixed any way around that. But in the meantime, what we need to focus on is our national human rights, nothing else. Because until we get our national human rights recognized in this country, in regards to our natural resources, in regards to democracy, we're not going to get anywhere with even of these things. And a lot of countries have manipulated different things for different reasons. So when you're looking at internationally, well, in regards to minority rights, well, what are really minority rights? The only minorities in Canada right now that we need to deal with are the Indigenous nations. And that's the minority because against Canadian citizens, which is a multitude of all kinds of other people. So we have to really think about this and start taking one chunk at a time, not try to fix it all in one shot. We won't. But what options do we have? Either we lose this country completely, we become slaves to a system of Australia has already approved the digital ID for Australians. Their government went ahead with it, approved it. We need to stop that here. How do we get the people to finally come together so that we can do things? Well, if we don't have the right to do things legally, we won't be able to do them at all. And, you know, um, the people are going to have to rise together in the right, how can I say, frame of mind or in the right direction with the right things. You can't just yell 50,000 things, say, oh, freedom or whatever. What do the people want? We want our rights, our civil and political rights recognized as the shareholders, co-owners of Canada, along in an equal partnership with the Indigenous nations. Now, the Indigenous nations have their territories. There's still other territories that need to be discussed, need to be negotiated. But at least in the governance partnership, we are two partners here, Canadians and Indigenous peoples, and that's the main priority there. And we need to remove the crown of Canada as well, King Charles, His Majesty in right of Canada, which is something that said, well, it's really not Charles, just His Majesty. His Majesty reflects the Canadian government because it's the state that has the sovereign right. But there's also the ultimate, okay, one that has the sovereign right, which is the human aspect of it. And that is right now, legally, King Charles, not us, not the people. So it's King Charles. So we need to be able to remove that and replace that with us, the people. So here it says, I'm just going to keep going here. Here it says, it keeps talking about the paper, and it says, here they're giving quotes about who wrote this. So if you look at this was an email to Gabriel Iru. And this was this was published from her email, and it says, "Hi Gabrielle, so I'm hopefully finished the religious intolerance paper, and this person and I thought it would be a good idea to share it with you before sending it off to Tabitha." So now they're referring to a person named Tabitha, a person and Gabriel, and they're trying to avoid names here. But mind you, they're claiming that under Section 17, because they're afraid of retaliation, that they don't have to disclose. Government division could never mind disclosing the name of the person who wrote it, who's responsible, and who got paid to do it. So really, it's like how they they have no problems with anything else, but one person has a little thing. Well, that's their tough luck, because if you're holding a job in parliament, you have to be able to stand behind your name, and what you say, stand behind your name. And if you've got problems fearing for your life, well, the thing is for what reason? And do you make a good point? And should you have security? Yes, but you shouldn't. They shouldn't be blocking off names, because it goes against the people's rights, and that's for another show. But in Africa, when they came out with all of the documents for Pfizer and all of them, the courts had, by law, and a court that does follow the rule of law, allowed, enforced that the whole entire document from Pfizer be exposed. And because the government is not allowed to take on work with and hiding information from the people. The same goes for these things here. Okay, so here it keeps going. Here you got another one that says, "Congrats to all for getting these important materials into final form," wrote Human Rights Commissioner Charlotte Ann Malachowski. Other commission executives call the report a great paper, a fantastic resource with an educational tone. Now, when we're looking at what they actually wrote, you have to see in which context. You have to see what are they kind of referring to. Is Christmas discriminatory? No. The fact that paid holidays just for that, but Christmas itself isn't discrimination. So again, they probably lose a court case there. But to say that the practice of Christmas is discriminatory, um, everybody has the right to their own religions. Um, should we open up the door for everybody to have holidays, paid holidays, and recognized? Hey, if we've got them for one, yes, we should have them for the others. So first of all, we have to um, ask the question, where does equality rights come into? What do we allow? What do we not allow? So that we're all equals in the end, because this is who we are as Canadian citizens and Indigenous peoples. We are equals in regards to equality rights and everything like that. But when it comes to this country and the land, then that separates us a little bit more. Okay, and this is where Indigenous lands were not negotiated. A lot of them were taken and said that, oh, we're going to protect your lands from the newcomers so that you don't have anything to worry about. And then throughout the court system, then they finally gave them only the right to hunt, fish, and trap on those lands, which was pretty underhanded. But to go back to how Canada was created and all this, we're not going to get into that. But the Indigenous nations have every right. They are the only minority group in Canada in regards to our civil and political rights. And then you have the Canadian citizens. So if you start understanding things like that, and we say, okay, well, now let's move on to equality rights. You know, male, female, we're all equals. Um, in regards to races, we're all equals. So it shouldn't be that hard, but they made it hard. They confused it. Here, like you can see this thing here. I'm just going to stop sharing here. Um, what they've been showing is absolutely incredible. Um, the way they mixed everything up to make sure people argue amongst each other. And um, where do we draw the line? Well, first we got to go back to basics. So let's get back to basics. Human beings. That's what we are. Male, female, don't matter. Color, don't matter. But who was here first here in Canada? That matters. So minority, again, Indigenous nations. And then we need to get together with them. We're 36 million more than they are, which is an atrocity in itself. But we're here. Nobody can be thrown out. Everybody's got human rights. human rights work both ways. So, anyways, and negotiations had been made, and yes, some claim, oh well, they were conquered, and no, and so we're not going to get into that again. But we need to move on from here. So, where do we move on from here? How do we save our country? And based on equality rights and the indigenous nations having their rights. And that's how we move on from here, because they've always, all of these problems also exist in the other countries. So we have to really look at human rights. What's behind the reason for human rights? Who should get human rights? So if you start looking at that and start thinking about it, when it gets the time to get things done, it'll be a lot more easier. You know, the line is drawn in equality and then in territory here for Canada. And if we stick to that, never mind everything else, we should be able to enforce equal rights for everyone. And finally, have a country where we are the shareholders, co-owners of the Crown of Canada. We all should be having dividends instead of paying taxation. We can help pay elsewhere. You can still have capitalism along with other things. There's such a better future that we could have if we all get together and work to make this country what it should have been in the first place, and help bring everybody along and getting along. So that's the key issue here. So as long as there's people out there being greedy and everything else, or trying to remain hateful and have a chip on their shoulders, we need to make sure that the people who come to this country leave what they left behind. This is Canada. Let's begin in creating a much better country, than we have right now, and move on from this. So signing your convention of consent is how you start. Making sure that you support the CPU, join the CPU as a member is the second thing that you can do. And then tell everybody in your community about it, because right now, the only way we're going to stop our communities from becoming our community jails, 15 neighborhood jails, and we're going to have to pay to go downtown. We're only going to be able to go in different places maybe 80 times during the year, and we have to pay a fee. So we're going to have to pay a fee to live. We're going to have to pay a fee for everything. And what happens for those who don't have any money? So right now it looks very bleak for Canada if we don't make a move, because we're losing the battle, people. No matter how you look at it, we're kind of losing the battle. Because why? Our governments are ignoring everything that's happening, are pretending like they're in a bubble. So we need to make our politicians listen to us. We need to make our lawyers listen to us. We need to make our justices listen to us. And we need the people to start understanding their rights, and everybody understanding their rights. So it's going to be a long road, but it's not going to happen overnight. But we need to start somewhere, and starting somewhere is understanding where do we look at our rights. Well, our rights, everybody has the same rights at the international level. Every country can do this, and nationally, we have the right to decolonize our country, and we have the right to self-determine our country as many times as we want. Even if we would have decolonized this country, we still could get together and self-determine together what we want for our future. We always have that right. That right always exists. So it's about getting it done. So it doesn't matter whether we're colonial or not. We get together, we stop what's happening, what our government is doing, without asking the people's permission. But here in Canada, we have to bring those rights forward, and you have to talk about those rights. It's about getting our rights to collective self-determination and self-governance here in Canada together. We're supposed to have had it in 1982, but it was stolen from us. The last piece of it was stolen from us, and it's up to us to take it back. So I'm going to let you go. I'm going to be coming back in French at 1 o'clock. Fait que là, je vais venir en français à 1 heure pour continuer en français. Là. Alors, je m'excuse du délai, mais Au moins, on est ici, puis on va discuter au niveau de c'est quoi vraiment les droits humains, puis c'est quoi qu'on devrait faire le focus. So I'm going to be back again, like I said, in French at 1 p.m. To be able to talk about this. But the real discussion there is about what's right, what's wrong, what is based on what. We really need to stop arguing over issues and then start really talking about equality rights. Equality rights will keep us on an even keel. And when they start saying, oh, well, minorities, well, if we have a certain right, then the minorities have that right as well. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay? Everybody has the same rights, nothing more, nothing less. So I think that's going to really open some doors to understanding what's going on and why. Well, you know, the most of the population doesn't have that right, so you can't get that right just because you feel. So feelings should never come into play. Feelings have no place in human rights. Okay? Feelings have no place in human rights. Faith, really, your faith has no place in human rights other than you have the right to go and practice your faith. Your type of faith doesn't matter. Okay, it's your rights to. Everybody has a right to their religious aspirations, you know, or whatever. So again, we got to really fine tune everything so that everybody stops arguing, because they've bastardized. And the woke, the whole issue there is about giving rights that are should never have been given to begin with. Okay, in that sense. But yes, you know, I mean, I appreciate some of the trans people out there. I've known many and still do. And the thing is but what they've done with the name thing is totally ridiculous. Because I'll give you the example. If somebody doesn't call me Ms., I'm going to go and sue you for $30,000, just like the trans can, because, oh, I'm a minority. A Ms. is a minority, right? Well, if the trans, my feeling is that I'm this. I feel that I'm a minority, and I feel that I've got two beings inside of me, living inside of me, one male, one female, whatever. Or I'm more female, I'm more male, I'm living in the body. I mean, the whole argument, come on. We're human beings. We all have the same rights. Whether you feel or don't feel, your feelings are up to you. And if you feel like that, hey, I'll support you, you know. But don't turn around and then just because somebody can't see, okay, what your mind is saying, we're not mind readers. You know, if we were mind readers, I could say, okay, maybe, but nobody's a mind reader. So human rights have to be truly defined. We have to really watch out for what's out there. And hey, you know, if people want to go and mutilate themselves, let them pay for it, but not other Canadians. It's not up to us. Cosmetics is cosmetics, you know? So, hey, case closed. You know, most people can't even get their teeth fixed because, oh, apparently it's cosmetics. So, hey, to each his own. But anyways, that's my discussion. People can be upset or not about it, but the thing is we need to really iron out what is equality, where we stand on this planet with everybody, and where we start drawing the lines on, you know, saying, hey, they did it on purpose to keep us separated because they used human rights where they shouldn't have. So talk to you later. Please go to the CPU. Tell everybody about the Powershift to Freedom movement. Join the CPU as a member and get everybody in your community to sign their Citizens Convention of Consent, to get together and to be able to help us stop what's happening. Because without you, we can't do anything at all. We need the population. We need you to take action. And until you take action with the CPU, we at the CPU cannot do anything. Okay, more than what we're trying to do now. So we need everybody to get together. 2024 could be the year that we actually make something happen. We need to start acting now. Thank you. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. I'm just going to leave you with one more thing here. And if I can find my way around this place. Okay, there it is. And we'll leave you with this.
Dive into 2024 with the CPU's dynamic campaign, set to energize Quebec and Ontario by reaching 75,000 homes with our empowering message. Every contribution you make is pivotal, driving this ambitious initiative forward and ensuring our information lands directly in communities via Canada Post. We extend special thanks to our dedicated CPU members, whose grassroots efforts amplify our reach. This campaign is your gateway to being part of a significant movement for change. Whether you choose to donate or volunteer, your participation is key to our success. Join us in making 2024 a victorious year for collective freedom and community action with the CPU.